Another mystery buried deep in the hills of eastern Washington keeps resurfacing. A bottomless pit said to be a pathway to the paranormal.
A hole that swallows sound, light, and history. Hidden in the hills near Ellensburg, Washington, Mel's Hole is said to have no bottom, yet it swallows everything dropped inside.
Waters said the hole had a 3-foot stone wall around it. It seemed bottomless to him, so he used an old shark fisherman's trick, sending thousands of feet of fishing line down.
In 1997, a late-night radio call dragged this legend into the spotlight. But decades later, when a drone was finally flown into the pit, what it recorded shocked even the skeptics. The feed revealed more than darkness. It hinted at something unnatural. Was it a hoax, a portal, or a cover-up? The truth may be far stranger. Rumor becomes a broadcast. It was February 1997, a cold night when a man named Mel Waters dialed into Coast to Coast AM, the late-night radio show that thrived on UFOs, conspiracy, and the bizarre. Host Art Bell had heard every kind of wild story, from alien abductions to secret military projects, but this one was different. Mel's voice was calm, measured. He didn't sound like a prank caller or a man seeking fame. He claimed that on his rural property near Ellensburg, Washington, there was a hole, not just any hole, a pit that swallowed everything, a pit that had no bottom. Mel said he tried measuring it himself. He wasn't a scientist, but he had fishing gear, so he tied a heavy weight to a spool of line and lowered it into the darkness. 1,000 feet, 2,000, 10,000. The weight kept sinking. No thud, no resistance. He kept feeding line until he reached nearly 80,000 feet, 15 miles, and still never hit bottom. The radio audience erupted in disbelief, but the strangeness didn't stop there. Animals, Mel said, refused to go near it. His dogs barked furiously at the edge, but would never cross the invisible line. Birds veered around it as though repelled by something unseen. Radios near the hole buzzed with static. Batteries drained for no reason. The hole seemed to eat more than objects. It consumed energy itself. Mel described tossing in televisions, bottles, even garbage. Every time he listened for the sound of impact, there was only silence. The story spread instantly. Coast to Coast AM had millions of listeners across America. Insomniacs, truck drivers, night shift workers, and conspiracy hunters. The idea of a bottomless pit was simple enough to retell, yet disturbing enough to stick in the imagination. Cassette tapes of the broadcast were copied and mailed across the country. In diners and truck stops, people repeated the tale of the hole that ate the earth. When the internet took hold in the 20,000s, the legend found new life. The call was uploaded to forums, then to YouTube. Later, TikTok creators whispered about it over eerie footage of misty forests. Each time, the story gained new ears. A hole with no bottom. Animals are afraid. Radio's dead. A perfect recipe for obsession. But here's the problem. The claim defied everything science knows about geology. On Earth, the deeper you go, the hotter it gets. Pressure rises. Rock begins to deform. The Soviet Union's Kola super-deep borehole, dug over 2 decades, reached only 7.6 miles before unbearable heat forced scientists to stop. Instruments melted, rock turned to plastic. Beyond that depth, the crust becomes too hostile for drilling. And yet Mel insisted he had casually dropped a weight 15 miles into a cool, silent void. Scientists scoffed. They pointed out that such a hole would destabilize the entire region. Earthquakes, collapses, and massive shifts in crustal structure would be inevitable. A natural hole of that size was, according to physics, impossible. If Mel's claim was real, it would overturn decades of geologic study. But the contradictions didn't stop the story. They made it stronger. Because if the hole couldn't exist, then why did Mel sound so certain? Why did he have so many specific details? And why did others start coming forward, saying they too had heard whispers of a strange pit in the hills long before Mel ever bought land there? This was the paradox at the center of Mel's hole. Science said it was impossible. Locals said it was real. Mel himself vanished into rumor, but the silence around the pit only grew. The absence of proof didn't smother the legend, it amplified it. No one expected the quiet part to be the loudest, that the silence around the hole would grow stronger than the story itself. Mel Waters. Man, myth, missing. When Mel Waters first introduced himself to the world, he sounded ordinary, a middle-aged man living outside Ellensburg, Washington. He said he was just a landowner, nothing special, no fame to chase. He owned property, he claimed, with a pit at its center that seemed to break every law of nature. That was it. No grandstanding, no obvious motive, just a man with a story. But the moment listeners began to dig into who Mel actually was, things got strange. Local reporters searched county land records. They expected to find tax bills, deeds, or utility accounts. Nothing turned up. No paper trail showed Mel Waters owning property in Kittitas County. No trace of him appeared in public databases. It was as if his name had been scrubbed from official memory. The more people looked, the less they found. This absence alone was suspicious. Either Mel had invented the name, or someone, or something, had made sure the records disappeared. People started asking, was he a hoaxer, or a man being erased? After his first call in 1997, Mel reappeared occasionally on Coast to Coast AM, but his life was no longer the same. He described being approached by government officials, not men in uniform, not marked vehicles, plain clothes, unmarked trucks, strange faces that showed up too often. According to Mel, they warned him, stop talking about the hole, drop the story, move on or else. Soon after, reports surfaced that Mel's land had been taken. Some said the government seized it under a vague claim of public safety. Others said Mel himself admitted to a deal, a quiet payoff, relocation, and silence. Whispers spread that he left for Australia with an annual stipend, but no one could prove it. What we do know, his appearances on the radio grew fewer, his tone changed, and the openness of his first call gave way to caution. By 2000, when he spoke again, Mel didn't sound like the same man. He hesitated. He avoided specifics. And in 2002, during one of his last known calls, he sounded broken. He described strange gaps in memory, days missing from his life. He hinted at waking up in unfamiliar places. He mentioned scars on his body, marks he couldn't explain, as if medical procedures had been performed on him without his consent. He wasn't frantic. He was resigned. And then nothing. After 2002, Mel Waters vanished. No more calls, no interviews, no written accounts. Journalists who tried to track him down ran into dead ends. Phone numbers didn't work. Addresses didn't exist. It wasn't just that Mel stopped talking. It was that he stopped existing. That's where the story grows darker. Because when a man disappears after telling a tale that shakes belief, his absence becomes part of the myth. It multiplies the mystery. Was he silenced? Was he hiding? Or was Mel Waters never real in the first place? Each possibility adds fuel. If Mel was a fraud, why couldn't anyone prove who he really was? If he was truthful, why did his trail vanish completely? And if he was something in between, what force had the power to wipe him from the map? What we can't confirm is almost more powerful than what he said. There are no official documents that settle the matter, no obituary, no confirmed sighting, no court records. Mel Waters hovers in the space between man and myth, half remembered, half denied. His voice exists on recordings, but his body has been swallowed by time, by fear, or perhaps by the very silence he warned about. And that's the strange part. The hole he described has outlived him. The legend persists, not because of what Mel proved, but because of what he couldn't. Every absence, every gap, every missing piece has only made the pit feel deeper. And while Mel fades, the hole refuses to, because others start speaking in the space he left behind. Tests at the edge of reason. Mel Waters wasn't a scientist. He didn't wear a lab coat or carry precision instruments, but when faced with something as baffling as a hole that refused to end, he did what anyone curious and stubborn might do. He improvised. Fishing line, weights, and sheer persistence became his tools. He claimed he lowered line after line into the abyss, tying spools together until the length stretched past comprehension. 10,000 feet, 20, 50, 80,000, 15 miles. Always the same result. The line vanished into darkness. No resistance, no tug, no echo from below. If true, it wasn't a hole. It was a tear in the earth itself. But the silence was the strangest part. Objects tossed into the pit should make noise. A refrigerator, according to one local, disappeared without a crash. Glass bottles thrown in, never shattered. Rocks never clanged against hidden walls. Even televisions, hurled into the void, failed to produce so much as a faint thump. The hole didn't just swallow, it erased. The oddities didn't stop at objects. Mel said animals avoided it instinctively, pacing or circling, but never daring to step close. Birds flew wide, as though the air carried an invisible warning. And electronics seemed to fail near the rim. Radios buzzed with static, their signals warped or drowned, batteries drained at unnatural speeds. It was as if the pit wasn't just empty, it was hungry. Then came the most grotesque claim of all, a story too bizarre, too far, yet one Mel himself repeated. He described lowering the body of a dead sheep into the abyss, tied carefully to the line. When he pulled it back, the sheep wasn't the same. Its body was intact, but something inside had changed. It was warm, twitching, as though life had returned, or something else had taken its place. Some versions of the rumor say a strange growth was found inside the animal, a kind of moving lump, pulsing beneath the skin. Mel never produced evidence. No photographs, no samples, only word. But the image was unforgettable. This is where the legend blurs into lore. The fishing line can be argued, the silence debated, but the sheep story veers into nightmare territory. Without records, without verification, it belongs more to myth than science. Still, once said, it spread. Radio listeners repeated it. Internet forums dissected it. Each retelling pushed the tale further from reality and deeper into horror. But here's where we must pause. Physics doesn't play along. Holes don't extend 15 miles without heat, pressure, or collapse. At just a few miles deep, the Earth's crust becomes hostile. Rock deforms. Temperatures soar. The Kola super deep borehole, the deepest attempt humanity has ever made, halted at 7.6 miles. Engineers battled extreme heat, pressure, and equipment failure. Past that depth, the crust behaves like molten plastic. To imagine a natural void twice that deep, stable, cool, and silent. Geologists scoff. Acoustics alone betray the claim. Objects dropped down a shaft will echo, rattle, or crash. Silence is not what physics delivers, and yet that silence is what grips people. Mel's crude tests clash violently with the natural laws we understand. They shouldn't be possible. They border on absurd, but they linger because they're so absolute. The line never stopped. The crash never came. The batteries never lasted. Each impossible detail stitched the legend tighter into people's minds. That's the paradox. The more his story defies logic, the harder it becomes to forget. If it's fake, it's elaborate. If it's real, it's terrifying. Either way, the strangeness sits heavy. Even if his tests don't add up, other voices soon do, and their details point to something stranger than one man's tale. Whispers from the hills. Long before Mel Waters ever spoke into a late-night phone line, the people of central Washington already whispered about the hills. Stories passed quietly from grandparents to children, tales that never made it into newspapers, but lingered like campfire smoke. Warnings that told kids not to wander too far, not to follow the wrong path, not to linger where the earth seemed restless. Some elders swore they'd been told of a hole that was never just a hole. They said things went in, but didn't come out the same. Hunters told of tossing debris inside and waiting for echoes that never returned. Others claimed they had heard unsettling noises, the deep, metallic grind of something turning beneath the ground, like machinery built long before humans walked there, not the crash of rock shifting or water rushing underground. This was mechanical, a low, pulsing hum, like a distant generator. Imagine standing in the still woods, hearing the forest quiet, then beneath it all, that sound, steady, unnatural, impossible to explain. Folklore built slowly, but consistently. Every detail was different, but the core stayed the same. There is a place in the hills where the earth is wrong. The stories didn't spread to outsiders. They were whispered to keep children away, not to entertain visitors. Some said the land was cursed. Some said it was sacred. But either way, you didn't trespass there lightly. Then came one of the strangest testimonies of all. A local rancher swore that late one evening, while tending his property, he saw a light. Not lightning, not the flash of a passing vehicle. A narrow white beam shot straight into the sky from the hole. It was narrow, precise, and silent. It didn't illuminate the trees around it or cast shadows. It just pulsed upward, like a blade of light cutting into the heaven. Then, as quickly as it appeared, it vanished. The man claimed he never saw it again, but he never forgot. His description was so precise it haunted those who heard it. Skeptics dismissed it as imagination. Others filed it as local testimony, unprovable, unverifiable. But the rancher never wavered. He believed it was real, and his conviction left a mark on the growing legend. More stories trickled in. Hikers told of sudden disorientation when wandering near certain ridges, unaware of the hole's rumored location. One woman developed a sudden, unexplained nosebleed. Her partner complained of blurred vision and dizziness, as though the air itself pressed in on them. They stumbled out, shaken and unnerved, swearing never to hike that trail again. Farmers noticed animals refusing to graze in wide circles around invisible boundaries. Horses spooked for no clear reason. Dogs refused to cross certain patches of ground, whining and pulling back on their leashes. To people, the air seemed the same. To animals, something was off. The repetition is what made these whispers matter. Different voices, different years, same patterns. A pit that consumed sound, a hum beneath the ground, a light that reached the sky. Animals that refused, people who suffered sudden, unexplained symptoms. None of it was recorded in scientific journals. None of it was mapped or measured. But folklore has its own kind of density. When enough unrelated people tell overlapping stories, the legend grows heavy, solid, and perhaps most unsettling. There were no coordinates. The hole wasn't marked on maps, and the stories rarely gave precise directions. Yet those who lived in the region seemed to know what not to approach. The absence of specifics only deepened the mystery. Outsiders couldn't test it, but insiders kept the silence alive. The whispers from the hills didn't prove Mel Waters right, but they didn't let him be dismissed either. They formed the background hum to his story, a chorus of voices that made his wild claim feel strangely familiar. But then a rumor miles away echoes the same pattern, and people start connecting dots across the desert. The Nevada Echo. Washington wasn't the only place where the earth seemed to open into silence. Rumors began to ripple out of the Nevada desert, a second hole, eerily similar to Mel's. But this one was different. It wasn't hidden on a rancher's property. It was wrapped in fences, patrolled by unmarked vehicles, and shadowed by the most secretive landscape in America, the vast reaches near Area 51. Locals whispered of a site where animals behaved the same way they did in Washington. Dogs refused to approach. Birds circled wide arcs around a clearing. Electronics sputtered, as if the air itself was hostile to circuits. People who lived nearby didn't ask questions. They'd seen enough strange activity, helicopters without markings, convoys of SUVs kicking up dust at odd hours, lights in the sky that didn't belong to planes. Out here, you didn't poke at mysteries. You survived by ignoring them. What made the Nevada hole intriguing was its resemblance to Mel's. Depth without end. Silence without explanation. And always that strange pull on machines and bodies alike. For those who believed, the conclusion was simple. This wasn't a coincidence. 2 holes, 2 states, 1 phenomenon. The theory grew. Some suggested these pits weren't isolated at all, but entrances to a vast underground network stretching across the continent. Maybe tunnels carved by ancient civilizations. Maybe a hidden infrastructure designed by forces unknown. Maybe not natural at all, but engineered. Others leaned toward military involvement. They called them classified Bohr anomalies, secret shafts drilled not for resources, but for research, into geology, into physics, into something more exotic. Were they experiments in gravity manipulation, testing grounds for advanced energy sources? If Mel's Hole was a wild story, the Nevada site was the hard shadow to match it, not a rumor shared on radio, but a mystery sealed under government watch. And still, no maps, no papers, no confirmation. Official surveys showed nothing. Geological records were silent. Journalists who tried to chase the lead found doors shut and phones hung up. Communities nearby said little. They had learned that curiosity drew attention, and attention in the Nevada desert was never good. Better to say nothing, better to pass nothing on. The silence was louder than any denial. For believers, this silence was proof. Why erase maps? Why blur satellite images? Why keep locals quiet? If there was nothing there, why all the effort? The absence of answers fueled the fire. The Nevada echo wasn't just about a second hole, it was about the pattern. Washington's mystery could be dismissed as folklore, but Nevada's secrecy looked deliberate, and deliberate silence is harder to ignore than laughter. Speculation surged online. Were these sites connected? Were they markers on a hidden grid, entry points to something vast and buried beneath the continent? Were they ancient? Were they alien? Or were they human-made, but so far beyond ordinary technology that they might as well be from another world? The truth never surfaced. No official admitted it. No scientist confirmed it. But for those who believed, the echo in Nevada was too sharp, too precise to ignore. If Mel's story was a strange broadcast from the Pacific Northwest, Nevada was the darker reply, a whisper from the desert that matched tone for tone. Speculation is noisy until hardware arrives. Then the dark has to answer a camera. The drone descent. For decades, Mel's hole lived in whispers, phone calls, and scattered folklore. But in 2023 and 2024, curiosity turned into action. A new wave of explorers, half skeptics, half believers, brought technology that Mel never had. No fishing lines, no dead sheep, no guesswork. They came with winches, tethers, high-resolution drones, thermal cameras, and seismic sensors. This wasn't just a campfire legend anymore. It was a mission they set up quietly, avoiding notice from locals and law enforcement. One group claimed they had triangulated the location using scraps of Mel's old descriptions, satellite anomalies, and testimonies from longtime residents. At the site, they built a base at night, camouflaged under the trees. Then they rigged a drone, custom-built for extreme conditions, reinforced rotors, EMP shielding, a tether strong enough to handle sudden jerks from below. Mounted on its frame were tools to record what the human eye couldn't: infrared scanners, magnetic field meters, and low-frequency audio receivers. At dawn, the descent began. The feed came in clean at first. Smooth stone walls slid past the camera lens, not jagged like natural rock, but strangely even, almost polished. The further the drone dropped, the stranger the readings became. Temperatures didn't rise with depth, as science predicted. They fell. Within minutes, the environment was as cold as a frozen tundra, breath-fogging cold, hundreds of feet underground. The anomaly set every warning light flickering. Then came the lights, pulses of glow, faint at first. They didn't illuminate surfaces like a flashlight. Instead, they swelled and faded in rhythmic bursts, as though something was breathing in the dark. Blue, then white, then gone. Seconds later, another pulse. The drone's instruments picked up faint magnetic fluctuations each time the glow appeared. The team whispered into their mics as they watched. The drone kept descending. At roughly 500 feet, the strangeness intensified. The magnetic compass on board drifted wildly, unable to lock onto north. The drone jerked sideways, though the tether stayed taut. A hum filled the feed. Not static, but a low, resonant vibration. It was the sound of stone trembling, stretched into long bass tones that made listeners' chests ache. And then something appeared, a shape, faint at first, then solid, tall, thin, still. It wasn't part of the wall. It wasn't a trick of light. It stood between the drone and the rock, unmoving, like a figure carved out of liquid shadow. No features, no motion, just presence. Seconds later, everything went black. The feed died. No static, no gradual signal loss, just an instant, absolute cutoff. Every backup system failed simultaneously. The tether reeled back an empty line. The drone was gone. That should have been the end, but in the digital age, nothing dies quietly. The team had mirrored the feed to multiple hard drives. Short clips leaked onto obscure forums within hours. The footage was grainy, incomplete, but unmistakable. Smooth walls, temperature drops, pulses of light, and the figure paused for one chilling frame before the blackout. Then the takedowns started. Posts vanished. Accounts were banned. Users claimed files corrupted instantly on upload. Some who tried to back up the footage said entire hard drives erased overnight. Others swore their devices bricked after attempting to open the file. The internet gave the anomaly a name, the sentient void. For a brief window, a single still image circulated, a stone chamber, pillars etched with carvings, dust clinging to surfaces untouched for centuries. Then that too disappeared. Was it real? Was it staged? Nobody could confirm, but the speed of suppression became its own kind of evidence. In the space of a few days, what had been a fringe pursuit became a viral obsession, and then, just as quickly, a silence deeper than the hole itself. And when the camera goes silent, the trucks arrive, and the map grows blurry. Cover, causes, or city below. When the drone footage flickered into silence, the internet was left to chase ghosts. But for a fleeting moment, one still image survived. A blurred, dimly lit frame showing what looked like stone pillars rising out of the darkness. Etched lines crawled across their surfaces. Not graffiti, not scratches, carvings. Some users swore the markings resembled Mayan glyphs. Others insisted they looked Sumerian. Still others argued they matched nothing known at all. A hybrid language? An invented script? Or something that wasn't human? No scholar confirmed the image. No museum stood behind it, yet it persisted, copied, reposted, whispered about in late-night threads. One picture, one ghostly room, and 1,000 theories. If it was fake, it was a powerful one. If it was real, it hinted at something almost unthinkable. An ancient chamber, hidden miles below Washington state. From there, speculation exploded into branches. Some claimed Mel's Hole concealed the remains of a lost civilization, a culture so ancient it predates recorded history. The idea fits snugly with folklore about people below, beings who supposedly lived underground to escape disasters on the surface. The chamber, in this theory, wasn't random. It was a city, abandoned, buried, and sealed. Others imagined an engineered vault. Perhaps it wasn't a home, but a prison, a place designed to hold something dangerous. The rhythmic pulses of light, the disorienting hums, the figure in the drone footage, signs not of ruins but of containment. Maybe the hole was never meant to be entered at all. Then came the Hollow Earth crowd. To them, the hole wasn't an isolated cavity, but a gateway to a vast interior world. Entire ecosystems, even civilizations, might exist beneath our feet. The drone's sudden blackout? A defense mechanism? A threshold crossed? A few went further still, physics bending anomalies. They argued Mel's Hole was a reversed pocket of reality, a fold in space where natural laws broke down. That would explain the silence, the cold, the vanishing objects. Items dropped into the hole didn't fall, they shifted elsewhere. Another dimension, another timeline. Somewhere humans weren't meant to peer. And of course, the skeptics had their say. To them, the hum was resonance in a narrow shaft. The light pulses were artifacts from malfunctioning sensors. The figure was a compression glitch. The supposed carvings, pareidolia, the brain forcing patterns onto shadows, a misread of noise, a trick of expectation. If you want to see the abyss, you'll find it in pixels. But here's the catch. Skeptics argue hoax, yet the government's response doesn't fit that script. If this were fake, the easiest move would be indifference. Ignore it. Let the story die. Instead, we see reports of land being fenced off, maps blurred, accounts scrubbed. If the site were nothing, why the effort? There's a middle ground. Maybe the site is hazardous, a collapsed mine, a sinkhole, or a volatile cavern that officials want contained. Restricting access would make sense. Protect the curious. Keep liability low. But then why erase Mel Waters? Why suppress leaked footage so aggressively? Why silence those who spoke? That's the tension. If it's nothing, the silence is too loud. If it's dangerous, the clampdown is understandable. If it's more, if it truly is a chamber of unknown origin, then we're staring at history's largest rewrite, one that would never debut on Reddit or TikTok. it would be classified, contained, and buried as deep as the pit itself, which leaves us here, at the edge of the unknown. Was Mel telling the truth? Was the drone feed genuine? Was the chamber real? We don't have answers. What we have are rumors, fragments, glitches, and the heavy weight of silence. So if the truth is down there, it may not be depth that matters, but what wants to come up. Mel's hole began as a late-night mystery, but once a drone pierced its depths, the legend grew darker than anyone expected. Some say it's a hoax, others believe it hides an ancient vault, and many fear it's something far worse. The government may deny its existence, but the silence around it speaks louder than words. What do you think is buried beneath Washington's hills? Myth, science, or something we aren't meant to know? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and watch the next video for even deeper mysteries.